Welcome. Today we're going to get into a really fascinating economic theory that explains why government spending doesn't just grow, it leaps. We're talking about something called the Peacock-Wiseman hypothesis, and it's a powerful way to understand the real patterns of public spending.
So let me start by asking you a question. When you picture how much a government spends over time, do you imagine a nice, smooth, steady upward curve? I mean, it seems logical, right? But what if the real story is, well, a whole lot more dramatic?
Okay, so on one hand, you've got this theory that suggests a simple, continuous increase in spending. But when economists Peacock and Wiseman actually dug into the real-world data, they noticed something else entirely, a stair-step pattern. They realized that spending doesn't just glide upwards, it jumps in response to major events.
To really get how we end up with these stairs, let's start at the very bottom step, a time of relative calm and stability in the economy.
So at first, things are pretty predictable. Government spending just follows this smooth, steady trend line upwards. You can think of this as the baseline, the normal state of affairs. Everything's going according to plan.
But, economies don't just move smoothly forever. Sooner or later, some kind of major shock hits. Maybe it's a war, a pandemic, a big financial crisis, and suddenly, everything changes. And that shock is what triggers the very first and maybe the most dramatic part of this theory, something they called the displacement effect.
And whoa, look what happens to our nice, smooth line. There's a massive jump. The crisis forces the government to just rapidly ramp up spending. This sudden surge completely displaces that old trend, launching expenditure from point A all the way up to point B.
So, to put it simply, the displacement effect is just how a major crisis shatters that old, predictable pattern and forces government spending to a whole new, much higher level.
This brings up a pretty logical question, though. Once the crisis is over and things kind of settle down, does all that spending just drop right back to where it was before? Well, Peacock and Wiseman's big insight was, nope, not at all.
And this brings us to the second phase of the story, the inspection effect. This is all about how a new, higher normal for spending gets established.
So what's going on here? After the crisis, spending might dip a little bit, sure. But notice this, it never goes back to the original path. It settles on a new, much higher plateau. And the main reason for this is preparedness. There's this new feeling that, hey, we need to be ready for the next crisis.
And that, right there, is the inspection effect. Spending stays high because the memory of that crisis creates a new baseline. It's the cost of being prepared for the future.
So the government is now operating from this new, higher spending level. What's the final piece of this puzzle?
Well, with the immediate crisis dealt with, the government doesn't just sit back. It starts to identify new goals, new priorities, and it concentrates its now larger resources to actively push the economy forward in a new direction.
And here we go, we see growth starting up again. Look, it's a smooth, upward trend, just like we had at the beginning. But the really crucial difference is that it's starting from that new elevated baseline that was created by the crisis.
This is the final piece, the concentration effect. The government focuses its attention and money on new priorities, and spending starts growing smoothly again, but from that permanently higher starting point.
So, when you put all three of these effects together, you get what the theory describes perfectly as a stair-like or even a zigzag pattern of government spending over time. So let's just do a quick recap of that three-step process. First, you have displacement. A crisis forces a huge jump in spending. Second, inspection. Spending settles down at a new, higher plateau. And third, concentration. Smooth growth kicks in again, but from that new, higher level.
And there it is, the complete picture. You can see it clear as day. It's not a straight line at all. It's a series of plateaus and jumps. Each crisis literally creates a new, higher step for the next period of growth to launch from.
And this leaves us with a really powerful question, doesn't it? When you look at the world today, what big shocks, economic, environmental, technological, do you think might create the next big step in government spending? It's a way of thinking that not only helps us understand the past, but also gives us a brand new lens to think about the future.